Hey my Reddit story lovers, welcome back to Bedtime Blocks. Tonight's stories are chilling ones. Reflections that move wrong, voices in the static, messages from the dead, and hotel rooms that shouldn't exist. So, get cozy, and let these eerie tales pull you in. I didn't notice the first time my reflection lagged behind me. I noticed the second when I raised my coffee and the man in the mirror didn't. He just stared back like he was studying a stranger. My kitchen smelled like stale espresso and dish soap, the window above the sink blurring the city into a watercolor smear. I set the mug down. The porcelain clicked. In the glass, my reflection smiled. I said out loud, because hearing my voice made it feel less like a dream. My breath fogged the mirror's edge. The figure didn't fog anything. I tried to blame sleep. I've been sleeping badly. Nights braided with half-dreams, my phone face down, the fan whirring like a faraway helicopter. But there was a new feeling behind my ribs. An awareness, like walking into a room and knowing someone's already there. I tested it. Left hand up, right hand up, tilt head, blink 3 times. My reflection copied everything with perfect precision until I lowered my arms. Then it kept them raised for a fraction too long, like it needed an extra beat to remember the script. I laughed once, quickly, like that would break whatever was happening. Didn't. The laugh echoed too long in the glass. A thin, tinny sound, like a recording played back from a different room. It's a trick, I told myself. Dirty glass. Bad light. I washed the mirror, foam squeaking under my palm, citrus cleaner stinging my nose. When the surface cleared, the man on the other side felt closer somehow, like he'd stepped toward me while I was busy scrubbing. My skin prickled. I lifted the edge of the mirror. It wasn't a cabinet, just a flat panel glued to drywall. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. That night, I hung a sheet over it with painter's tape. As I pressed the last corner, something tapped from the other side, soft, polite, like a knuckle on glass. 2 quick beats that made the tape peel with my hand still on it. Which is how I learned you can cover a mirror, but you can't cover a feeling. I started finding him in places that weren't mirrors. The black screen of my phone as it lit in the dark, catching me with my mouth slightly open and his mouth closed. The taxi window, rain pinstriping the city, where his eyes slid a few millimeters to the left, like tracking something over my shoulder. The puddle near the subway stairs that rippled with the passers-by. Only in the ripple, his head didn't distort. Don't do that, I whispered once to a cafe window, forgetting it was public. A barista glanced at me, then at the glass, then back like she'd decided not to ask. At work, I angled my monitor so it wouldn't show me. My coworker Nora noticed the weird setup. Minimalist? She joked, tapping the edge of my screen. I looked up and caught him in the reflection. Me smiling at Nora. I wasn't. Can I ask you something? Not normal? I said. She shrugged. I like not normal. You ever see yourself move wrong? Like your reflections on a delay. Nora blinked. You okay? Yeah. Elite fast. Just tired. That night, I bought more tape and more sheets. I covered the bathroom mirror, the hallway art that had a glossy finish, the TV when it was off. The apartment turned soft and tinted, like a temporary camp someone built to hide from weather. The fan kept blowing. The air smelled faintly of dust and lemon. I slept with my mouth open, woke with a dry tongue and a new text on my phone from an unknown number. You don't need to hide me. I froze. Another text. Turn around. I didn't. I stared at the words until they blurred. When I finally lifted my head, I checked the dark window. For a long breath, it showed me exactly as I was. A tired man, phone in hand. Then, slow enough to make me feel it in my teeth, the man in the glass raised his hand and waved. My phone vibrated again. Let me practice. Practice? For what? I typed, "Who are you?" The dots pulsed. No answer. The next night, The sheet on the bathroom mirror had slipped. Someone had written a message in fingertip streaks through the condensation. Not backward, not reversed, perfectly legible from my side. Almost ready, and I realized the thing on the other side wasn't learning to copy me. It was waiting for me to copy it. The morning after the condensation message, I took every reflective thing I owned and made a pile on the kitchen table. Picture frames, a chrome spoon that warps my face, the tablet screen, even the kettle. The apartment felt naked without shine. The light turned soft and directionless, like a cloud had come inside and forgotten how to leave. I waited for the text that didn't come. At lunch, I stood in the bathroom at work and stared at the paper towel dispenser. The thin steel bent my outline into an oval. "Not today," I said, and my breath fogged the metal. His didn't. He leaned in closer than angles should allow, and pinned me with a look like we were already mid-conversation. I raised my hand. He didn't. He tilted his head instead. Slow, curious. That night, I finally texted first. "What are you practicing?" Dots appeared, vanished, returned like someone pacing. "Timing." I typed. "For what?" "Hinge," he sent. "Doors need hinges." "What door?" I asked the dark window. The city smelled like rain and engine heat. My phone lit again. Left, right. Breath. Blink. Cut. Cut. Practice bleed. I laughed. A small sound. No, I put the phone down like it could bite. In the bathroom, I peeled the tape off the sheet a few inches. Cold air flowed out. The mirror was black at first, then found me like an eye dilating. He lifted his hand and touched where my cheek meets my ear, the spot a childhood dog clipped with a paw. There's a thin white scar there. In the glass, the scar was on the wrong side. He smiled when I saw it. Not unkind. Not kind either. Inviting, like someone holding a door. I pressed my fingertip to the glass opposite his. The chill ran up my arm. "There's no door," I whispered. "Only this." The mirror fogged on my side. On his, the fog made a shape, an oval, then a line through it. Open. When I pulled my hand back, a bead of blood sat where my cuticle had split. I hadn't felt it happen. In the glass, the bead was bigger, trembling like a drop about to fall. I wrapped my finger in tissue. The phone buzzed. Almost. Tomorrow. And for the first time since this started, I believed him. I invited Nora over because my head felt like a room I shouldn't be in alone. "I know it sounds insane," I told her on the phone, "but I need you to see something and tell me I'm not inventing it." She arrived with takeout and a frown. My living room looked like a fort. Sheets draped, tape curling at corners, the TV mummified. "You've committed to a vibe," she said, trying to make it light. In the bathroom, I pulled the sheet down. Steam from the shower I just run still clung to the glass. Nora stood behind me, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. Orange and mint. "Okay," she said. "Do the thing." I raised my right hand. The man in the mirror raised his left. "That's how mirrors work," Nora said, but her voice had a question under it. I lowered my arm. He kept his up, just a beat too long. Nora's mouth went small. "Weird. Talk to him," I said, and immediately felt stupid. She leaned closer. Her breath made the cloud sway on the glass. "Hey," she said softly, like greeting a dog you're not sure will bite. The man's eyes slid to her and then, this is what made my scalp go tight. He matched her expression exactly. Her eyebrows, her mouth, not copying me, copying her. Nora stepped back so fast her heel thumped the tub. "Nope," she laughed, a little panicked. "Nope, no thank you." The mirror fog thinned and writing appeared in a clean streak. Legible to us. Nora. Then, beneath it, kind. And then, like a promise that felt like a threat. Soon. I covered the mirror with both hands, as if I could press the words back in. "I'm getting help," Nora said, already moving toward the door. "A priest, a shrink, an IT guy, someone." "Don't," I said too quickly. The texts had gone quiet for a day, but I felt him attentive in the glass. Practice, he'd said.
Hinge.
I imagined what a hinge needs. 2 plates, matched holes, a pin to marry them. Breath, blink, cut. Nora stood in the hall with her coat half on. You're scaring me, she said. Me too, I said. But stay, just tonight. She looked at the tented living room, at the sheets, at me. Okay, she said finally. One night. In the mirror, the last of the fog slipped down like rain. The glass was blank, but I could feel him smiling. Story 2. The old radio was a thrift store joke. Brown, boxy, smelling like attic dust and the peppery bite of old electronics. It didn't work. That was the bit. When friends came over, I'd twist the knob and give a little shrug as it coughed a tired ghost of static and then fell back into silence like it remembered it was dead. Last week, I turned it on before bed, just to have some white noise. I've been anxious. The apartment gets too quiet around 2 a.m., like the building holds its breath. The dial lit a weak amber. Static poured out in a thin ribbon, soft as rain on a tarp. Then it said my name, not cleanly. It threaded the syllables between hiss and crackle like a fisherman working a knot. Jacob. The room went small and hot. I turned the knob off. The static didn't stop. Okay, I said, because saying anything felt like taking back a little ground.
Okay, no.
I unplugged it. The cord dropped with a thunk. The static dimmed but didn't die. It wandered the frequencies like someone pacing a hallway you can't see. I pressed the radio to my ear. The speaker breath tasted metallic like pennies. Is this a prank? I asked the empty room. Because good one. You got me. I remember the creak, the static said, sudden and full. I flinched so hard my elbow hit the table. The radio slid, thunked again. The green rope swing, the bruise on your shin. Summer. I forgot how to breathe for a second. I didn't tell people about that summer. I didn't tell anyone about the way we dared each other to jump and how the river smelled like algae and sugar from the fireworks stand up the road. Who are you? I asked, hearing the thinness in my voice. The static softened, like someone putting their mouth closer to the mic. Outside. There was a knock then. Not loud, not polite. A knuckle, deliberate, like testing a wall to see where it's hollow. The radio hissed, the room pinwheeled around me. I didn't go to the door. I didn't sleep. I listened to the radio breathe until it felt like it was practicing the timing of mine. I recorded it the next night because it felt less like surrender and more like collecting evidence. My phone sat on a stack of old magazines, the radio beside it, both aimed at each other like 2 animals crouched in a desert at dusk. I drew the curtains, left one lamp on. The bulb hummed and threw a yellow circle on the floor where dust skated like lazy planets. If you can hear me, I said, hating the theatrical sound of it. Say my name again. Static clawed through silence.
Jacob.
Tell me something only I would know. A skitter of noise, the shape of a laugh hidden inside it. You buried the cigar box under your mother's lilac bush. For pictures. 2 notes. A friendship bracelet. My jaw hurt. What color? Red. Your wrist turned pink in summer. I swallowed. There was no one who knew that. What do you want? The radio breathed like it had height. To come in. In where? I asked, trying for a joke I couldn't find. In, it said, and I could swear the word was wetter now, closer to mouth than machine. I checked the plug again even though I knew the cord was out. I lifted the back panel. The guts smelled like warm dust. There was no battery. Still it spoke. Where are you right now? At your door. I heard the hallway then, soft carpet footfalls, the stutter of the elevator cables settling. I turned the deadbolt without meaning to and put my palm flat to the wood. It felt cold, like someone was cooling it from the other side. Why can you use this? I touched the radio. Because you asked for a voice when you were 8. The creak again. The rope swing. The dare. I had stood on the bank and asked the air for a sign. Any sign that there was something listening. Now it was, "Go away," I said, breath shaking. "Please." The lamp flickered. The static narrowed until it was a single tone that made my teeth ache. "Let me practice," it said, and I realized the breath timing had matched mine again, perfectly this time. The bulb popped. Darkness folded down. In the black, the radio whispered my name in the exact tone my mother used when I was sick. And the knock came again. Same knuckle, same patience. Waiting to hear me cross the floor. By evening, I decided to throw the radio away. Like that would evict the tenant living in its wires. I dropped it down the building's trash chute. It clanged against the sides on the way down and landed with a sound like a lid sealing ajar. I felt lighter for 6 minutes. Then the bathroom fan turned itself on and whispered my name through dust. The refrigerator kicked and the hum spelled J. A cob in a way my head couldn't unhear. The elevator cable sang low like a throat clearing, and in the sound I heard outside again. "This isn't funny," I told the ceiling. It wasn't trying to be. Around midnight, the neighbor across the hall banged once. I opened my door. He stood there with his palm flat against the jamb like he'd stopped himself mid-knock. "Do you hear that?" he asked, trying to play it cool and failing. "Like someone tuning, you know?" He gestured at his ear, embarrassed by the gesture itself. "Old building," I said. We both knew that wasn't it. I tried noise-canceling headphones. The static crawled under the seal like water. I tried music. The voice braided itself through the song like a harmony I couldn't isolate. At 1:40, the stove clock blinked 12. 12. 12, and the cadence matched my pulse. I found myself breathing in time with it like it had a metronome, and I wanted to be good at playing along. "We practiced," the voice said, smooth as warm milk now. "Little you wanted a sign. I have a sign. Open the door." "What happens if I do?" We stopped practicing. The hallway beyond my peephole looked normal: old carpet, potted plant, exit sign hum. I stood there with my hand on the deadbolt, thinking about indoor rules and outdoor rules and how doors sort the world. My phone lit with a new voice memo. Sender unknown. I pressed play. It was me. My voice. "Open it," my voice said. And the way I paused between syllables was exactly my pause. I didn't open it. The lights dimmed, brightened, settled. The building sighed. The voice in the wires quieted to a patient hiss. "Tomorrow," it said. "Count to 8. I drove to the creek at noon because the voice had pulled the word out of me like a thread. And once you tug a thread, you have to see what unravels. The air out there smelled like wet leaves and sun-warmed algae. The old rope swing was gone, but the branch remembered it, a smooth scar where it had rubbed. I parked under cottonwoods and felt 12 again and small. I brought the radio back because I'd fished it from the dumpster at dawn like a coward. The cabinet was cracked from the fall. When I set it on the bank and turned the dial, static unrolled like linen. "You're not supposed to work," I said, and the stupid tenderness in my voice made me want to kick it into the water. "Count to 8, the static said. "Like you did when you wanted a voice." I closed my eyes and counted. On 4, I remembered the dare. On 6, I remembered slipping in the mud and the water clapping shut over my ears. On 8, I remembered opening my mouth and asking the river if anyone was listening. "I was," the radio said. The creek's surface dimpled with insects. Their feet looked like punctuation. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Really? Where you?" it said, as if asking to borrow a jacket. "Practice is done." No, the word felt small as a pebble against a storm. "You asked for me," it said, and it was not wrong. "I kept you from the deep." The memory tilted. The slither of mud, the handhold that wasn't there, the fact I didn't drown because something pushed at my back as if the current had turned to fingers. You said please. The voice reminded me, and I hated that I had. I picked up the radio. The wood was hot in my hands, though the day wasn't. I threw it into the creek. It hit with a flat sound and sank a few inches, then stayed, buoyed by trapped air. Static leaked into the water like dye. The whole surface turned to speaker. You can close your ears, the creek said, but you can't close your bones. The water's hum got into me like a dentist's drill. I stepped back, chest aching, and the voice followed the ache like it had found a door that matched its hinge. I drove home with the windows down and the radio off and the wind sounding, to my horror, like breath practicing my timing. Story 3. My best friend died 8 weeks ago on a wet Thursday when the road turned to oil under his tires. I still have the voicemail he left me that morning. His laugh sharp, his voice a little hoarse like he'd yelled at a game the night before. I haven't listened to it. I haven't deleted it either. It sits on my phone like a small room I don't have the key to. The first time the typing bubble appeared, I thought it was a cruel bug. 2:14 a.m., the chat with his name lighting up, 3 dots swelling and shrinking like a heartbeat. No message came. It just typed at me. I watched it for 10 minutes, an hour, until I slept with the phone on my chest and woke with screen heat on my collarbone and no words in the thread. The second night, I took a screenshot. The third night, I showed our group chat. Probably someone hacked his account, Evan said, practical as always. Or a delayed delivery thing. Glitch City. Don't block it, Ava said, voice small in a way I wasn't used to. Just see. The fourth night, the dots started at exactly 2:14 again. My apartment was blue with moonlight and the late train moaned under the windows like a whale. I typed, "Who is this?" The dots stopped. For the length of a breath, I thought it was over. Then a photo came through. It was my bedroom. Me in bed, seen from above, face turned toward the rectangle of light on the nightstand. The angle made my skin look unfamiliar. I looked at the ceiling. There isn't a camera in my room. I don't even own a smoke detector with a lens. I stared at the photo until the pixels crawled. My heart beat in the soft part of my throat. I sent the picture to Ava. "Where was this taken from?" She called immediately. "The vent?" she asked, and I think we both knew she didn't believe it either. The next night, I moved the bed. I slept on the couch with a blanket I never use because it smells like storage, cardboard, and a ghost of dryer sheet. I set an alarm for 2:10 and made coffee I didn't drink. 2:14, the typing bubble started again. I typed faster. "If this is a hack, say it. If this is a joke, please stop. Dots, dots, dots." A link came through. A wilderness of numbers and letters that didn't look like any URL I recognized. I didn't click. Another message. "You said I could borrow your jacket," and a photo of a denim jacket with a tear in the cuff. The one he spilled hot sauce on last summer. The stain made a rusty sun near the pocket. I hadn't even remembered that until now. "Okay," I whispered, because the room felt like it was listening. "Okay, I believe you." A new text. "Come outside." I didn't. I'm not brave in the movie way. I'm brave in the paying bills kind of way. I stood behind the door and put my ear to it. The hallway breathed. Someone on 3 dropped something heavy. The elevator sighed. My phone buzzed. Look, a live photo this time. The brief movement catching the silver fish shimmer of a hallway. The grainy shape of my door. And, when the frame steadied, an empty doormat. Except it wasn't empty. There was a folded page there. A torn-out sheet of notebook paper with my name on it in my friend's hurried, left-slant handwriting. I opened the door. The air was hotel dry, conditioned, stale. The note was real. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. The words were short, zip-tied together like he'd written them fast. "You said you'd come with me. Please." My phone buzzed again. Pin dropped in our thread. Coordinates. I pasted them into maps. The blue dot landed on the old service road by the quarry. The place we dared each other to climb the fence when we were 14 and believed that gravity was a rumor. The place where the highway curves too fast. The typing bubble pulsed once, slow, like someone thinking about saying please again. I grabbed the jacket with the sauce sun, and the apartment felt suddenly like a place I used to live. I told Ava I wouldn't go and then drove anyway. The map line to the quarry looked like a vein running out of town, thin, blue, pulsing with little warnings about fog. The car smelled like coffee and old French fries. I kept touching the passenger seat where he used to throw his bag, like the fabric could remember the weight of him. At 2:01 a.m. a text came through, even though reception out there is a rumor. Almost there? I typed, "Where are you?" The typing bubble started and didn't stop. A lighthouse blinking from nowhere. When the asphalt turned to the cracked service road, another message dropped. A photo of the chain-link gate, the one with the "No trespassing" sign bent like a grin. In the picture, the lock was cut. In real life, when I parked and aimed my flashlight, it hung open like a mouth surprised to find itself ajar. I sent my location to Ava and put the phone on low power. "Call if I don't text in 20. I wrote, trying to sound brave and landing on bossy. I climbed. The fence jittered under my hands. The air in there had a different temperature, cooler and wet, like a basement after rain. The pool at the bottom of the pit held the sky with that oily calm quarries get at night. The surface looked solid until you looked too long and saw it breathing. "You forgot your jacket," the message read when I steadied my light. I looked down. I'd brought it without noticing, the denim folded in the back seat. I draped it over my arm like a promise I hadn't kept yet. There were skid marks on the service road inside the fence, black snakes shot into the gravel. Fresh, or my head wanted them to be fresh. I followed them with the beam until they ended at a scuff of dirt that could have been anything if you squinted hard enough to make the world kind. My phone buzzed again. A live photo. The same path I was on, captured from just behind me. In the movement, my shoulder shifted. A small sound leaked from the clip, breath, maybe mine, maybe not. "Where are you?" I asked the hollow pit. My voice came back as if it hated being me. The quarry has a spooned-out shape. The walls terraced like giant steps where machines once bit the earth. I went down 2 tiers, boots scraping, rocks clattering in tiny avalanches that announced me over and over. The water smelled like pennies and plant rot and the kind of cold that doesn't care what month it is. A new message, left of the old loader. I swung the light. The loader was a skeleton, rust ribs, a back broken by years of snow. Near it, something pale on a rock. My denim jacket, folded. I had the jacket. I also didn't. My brain, that careful liar, tried to make both true until I reached out and touched the fabric. It was damp and colder than the air. There was a note tucked in the sleeve. My name. The letters leaned left like they always did when he wrote fast. "You promised," it said. That was all. The words were enough to bring that day back in a rush. Last winter, his car stuck. Me saying I'd swing by after work. Me not swinging. We laughed about it later because he'd gotten free by then, and you can laugh at what didn't end you. "I'm sorry," I said, and the quarry ignored me. The typing bubble started again, patient as weather. A ripple moved across the water, though no breeze touched my face. The ripples made lines that looked like text, which is the kind of thing you think when you've stared at your phone too long while grieving. Still, I read, "Come down." "No," I said. "No, man." The last word jumped out of my mouth like a reflex and made my eyes sting. I came. "Come down," the water wrote again, and this time the letters were made of light, the algae shimmering with a color that didn't belong to night. Something splashed softly near the far side, like a fish turning. There are no fish here. I edged closer until the ground tilted slick. My reflection gathered itself at my feet, the beam of my light cutting a bright ladder into the black. And there he was in the reflection where I should have been, his mouth corking in the way that made me call him a liar when he said he wasn't mad. He lifted a hand and made the gesture he always made when he wanted a cigarette. 2 fingers, barely a joke. Please, I heard. Not through my ears, but through the pocket where I kept his last voicemail. The typing bubble became a single dot, held like a held breath. The reflection held me the way a hand on the collar holds a dog. Firm, unrelenting. He, my friend, my ghost, my liar, stood in the black water at my feet like it was glass, shoulders relaxed, mouth curved just enough to make me think of Friday nights when we used to laugh until our throats hurt. I whispered his name, and the reflection's lips didn't move. Instead, my phone buzzed. Almost. Just one more step. I can't, I said out loud, voice cracking like glass. You're not. You're gone. The reflection tilted its head like a man trying to be patient with a child. A small ripple bent the beam of my flashlight. My jacket, his jacket, slipped from my arm. The denim brushed the dirt and landed half in shadow, half in light. My phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't words. It was an audio file. My thumb shook as I opened it. His voice poured out raw and close, like he was whispering against the mic. I was waiting. I'm still waiting. Don't leave me here alone. My knees almost buckled. I wanted to throw the phone, hurl it into the quarry so it could sink with the other lies. But I couldn't. It buzzed again, screen glowing in my palm. The typing bubble began. 1 dot, then 2, then 3, swelling and shrinking until they froze. A message appeared. Look behind you. Every inch of me went cold. Slowly, I turned the flashlight back toward the slope I'd come down. At the top of the rise, a figure stood, dark, still, impossible to measure distance against. Just watching. I swung the light back to the water. The reflection was gone. Only me stared back now, pale and shaking, with eyes that didn't look like mine anymore. The phone buzzed again. Choose. The figure at the ridge didn't move, but the sense of weight pressed heavier, like the quarry itself leaned in to see what I'd do. My chest felt small, ribs brittle. This isn't you, I told the night. You're gone. The water disagreed. Another ripple spelled something out, letters glowing faint green in the algae bloom. Not gone. Not yet. The figure shifted. Just a step. Enough gravel slid down to hiss against stone. My flashlight quivered in my hand. I could swear the figure was wearing that same denim jacket with the sunburst stain on the pocket, the one now lying in the dirt at my feet. Stop, I whispered. Please stop. The phone buzzed. Picture filled the screen. It was me, crouched at the quarry's edge, light bouncing, eyes wide. But the picture wasn't from my angle, it was from behind me, as though whoever stood on the ridge had taken it seconds earlier. The screen flickered, then another text, come down, or I come up. The reflection in the water trembled, smearing until my face returned. But the eyes were still wrong. They glowed faint, catching the light like an animal in headlights. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I edged closer to the lip of the pool. The air was heavy, metallic, damp in my lungs. A memory of his laugh rose again, sharp and bright, the kind of laugh that made people turn their heads on sidewalks. I wanted to believe it was him. I wanted to believe the waiting was real. The flashlight beam skipped across the water. For just a heartbeat, I thought I saw him beneath the surface, standing upright in the black, one hand raised as though reaching for me. The phone buzzed once more, a final message lighting the night. Time to finish what we started. And the typing bubble returned, never ending, pulsing like a heartbeat, as the figure on the ridge began the slow, deliberate climb down toward me. Story 4. I was 300 miles into a drive that should have been 2 when the interstate went to hell. Cones, flares, taillights smearing into cherry syrup. I took the first exit that promised food/lodging and ended up in a town that felt like a movie set after the crew had gone home. Clean, Empty, streetlights humming to nobody. The motel was one of those long, low places with doors that opened straight to the parking lot. The sign buzzed so softly it sounded like a mouth humming through closed lips. Inside, the clerk wore a name tag that said Maria in a font older than me. I asked for a room and she counted keys on a pegboard with the absent focus of someone counting sheep. Full, she said, then paused. Unless you want 6. 6. I followed the tip of her chin to a key that had dust where the metal met the tag. The brass was heavier than it looked. 6 was etched deep into it, the numbers thin and elegant like they'd been written with a fountain pen. Cash, she said, like the word might spook me.
No receipt.
I paid. The hallway smelled like old air conditioner and carpet shampoo. Room 2, room 4, room 5, a dark stretch where a light had burned out, then the door marked 6. The lock turned like it hadn't in a while. Inside, everything had that yellowed-brown ghost of cigarettes you can't scrub out. Lace curtains aged to tea, a landscape painting that had sweated its colors into the frame. The bedspread was floral and thin as a postcard. At midnight, the rotary phone on the nightstand rang. You don't forget that sound. It's a sound with teeth. I picked up. Hello. A hum, the line's breath. Then, you made it back. A voice like someone talking through a mouthful of water. I just got here, I said. But it felt like an argument the room and I had been having for a long time. Don't check out, the voice said, and the line clicked dead. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I took the key back to the desk. Maria looked at me for a second too long. We don't have a 6, she said, so gently it felt like being tucked in. I walked the corridor again to prove it to myself. Room 2, 4, 5. Where 6 had been was wall newer paint, a square of color a shade too bright. I pressed my palm to it. The drywall felt warm like breath held behind it. I stayed here, I told Maria, the key heavy in my pocket. Last night. She watched the key like you watch a spider on the ceiling, unmoving, waiting to see which way it jumps. We don't have that, she repeated. Not since, she stopped. It's early. Coffee? I took the hint and left, key still in my hand. The morning had that just washed smell, asphalt dark and shiny in places where sprinklers overdid it. I opened my car. The key thumped against the console, colder suddenly, as if it had been in a freezer. When I looked, the engraving wasn't just a number anymore. There were words beneath it, faint, like a palimpsest rising through old paper. Check out. August 21st, 2025. Today. Okay, I said to the key because it felt like the only thing talking to me honestly. Okay. I tried to drive away. The GPS offered 3 routes and then froze. All of them gray, all of them recalculating. The cheery voice stuck on proceed to the route. I pulled back into the lot and sat with the engine ticking. The phone in my pocket vibrated. Unknown number. 1 line of text. You left the window open. I was halfway up the hall before I remembered there wasn't a room. The bright square of paint looked wet now, glossier than it had an hour ago. I pressed my ear to it. The wall was ocean-sounding, a held-breath roar. And somewhere under it, like someone talking at the bottom of a pool, you made it back. I slid the key against the paint, caught on nothing. Then, softly, the brass sank into the surface like a knife into cake. The wall pulsed. The lock, which wasn't there, turned. And when I stepped back, there was a door where a wall had been, and the number on it had changed. Said 9. The door read 9 and I hated it for how calmly it did. I slid the key into the lock because every other part of this made less sense. The tumblers turned like a throat swallowing. Inside, the air had that closed book smell of rooms that remember more than they are used. The furniture was almost the same as 6, same bedspread, same painting, but the painting now showed a different field, a winter version of the same hill. The clock on the nightstand wasn't a digital. It was a tiny brass carriage clock. The rotary phone rang again. "Hello," I said, because I don't learn. "You made it back," the voice said. "Check out at 11. Don't leave early." "I'm not staying," I said, already losing the argument. The bathroom mirror had a silvered border that bloomed like frost. When I wiped it with a towel, it showed me in a shirt I haven't owned in years. Thin stripes, frayed cuffs. I touched the fabric at my shoulder. My reflection touched a shirt that no longer existed and looked pleased about the error, as if it had won something. On the sink sat a wrapped bar of soap stamped with the motel's name. I didn't remember the motel having a name. Back in the main room, there was a Polaroid on the nightstand I hadn't seen before. It was still developing, colors materializing like bruises. When the image settled, it was me sleeping in this bed, mouth partly open, the phone on the pillow like a pet. The date scrawled along the white border read August 21st without a year. I touched the ink. It was dry and warm. I put the photo face down. The phone rang a third time. "What do you want?" I asked, and the question had too much salt in it. "Rooms stick," the voice said. "Some to people, some to time." The line crackled. "You left a window open." I turned. The curtains stirred though the window was shut. The corridor outside had gone longer while I wasn't looking, a perspective trick that stayed tricky no matter how I blinked. There was a knock then, gentle as a spoon on a teacup, from the wardrobe I hadn't opened yet. Inside the wardrobe hung 3 empty wire hangers and a smell like old churches, wax and cold cloth. The knock came again from the back panel, same politeness, like whatever was behind it had been taught manners. I pressed my knuckles to the wood. It pulsed once under my hand, not like heart, more like elevator cables settling. Down at the desk, Maria had poured coffee into a styrofoam cup. When I came out with the key between 2 fingers, she didn't ask why I was shaking. "You slept?" she said, and the question was so absurd we both smiled. "You said there's no 6, I said. "But there is a 9. She looked at the pegboard. The key for 9 was missing. "We don't number that high," she said softly, like telling a kid that monsters are real but they follow rules. "Sometimes there's an extra door. My mother worked here. She said the building was patched, rooms over rooms." Her gaze slid to the key in my hand. "They come back when they're ready." "Who?" "People," she said. Then, almost a whisper, "and nights." I should have left. I walked back to the corridor instead. The stretch where 6 had once interrupted the numbers now had a fire extinguisher in a glass box and a framed evacuation plan that didn't include my hall. The plan showed an elevator we didn't have. The glass over it threw my face back at me, a little yellower than it ought to be. The phone in my pocket buzzed. "Return key to room." The sender line was blank. "No," I told the empty hall, and the exit sign did a quick dim bright like a shrug. When I turned the corner, the numbers had shifted. 2, 4, 7, 9, 3. The 9's door sat open a thumb width, breathing air that smelled like dust warmed by bulbs. I put my palm to it and felt the drag of carpet on the other side, as if the room were holding its breath and could be startled. I stepped in with the ridiculous thought that if I closed the door fast enough behind me it couldn't change again. The phone rang midway through the swing. "You made it back," the voice said for the 4th time, and for the first time it sounded tired. "How do I check out?" "At the right hour from the right room." The line crackled like pages turning. "You'll know the room because it will know you." The wardrobe knocked once, patient as a desk bell. The knock came again from inside the wardrobe, and the sound reminded me of school nights. My father tapping the door with 2 fingers, just once, to say he was home. I pressed my forehead to the wood. Cold, thicker than it looked. The phone on the nightstand rang. I yanked it up before the second chime. "What's in the wardrobe?" I demanded. The voice paused long enough that I thought it was gone. Then guessed. "Waiting." Don't be rude. I want to leave. Checkout is 11. The words were slow, heavy, as if the phone itself resisted saying them. I opened the wardrobe. Inside was the same, 3 wire hangers, old wax, cloth smell. But the back panel was wrong. Instead of wood grain, it showed wallpaper. Yellow, patterned faintly with roses, peeling at the seams. Wallpaper I recognized from my grandmother's house. My chest tightened. I stepped closer. The panel wasn't solid. It shifted like paper when I touched it, crinkling under my fingertip. Behind it, faint but steady, I heard breathing. The Polaroid on the nightstand clicked again. A new picture slid free. I hadn't touched the camera. The image developed as I stood frozen. Me, bent into the wardrobe, hand on the paper wall. Another knock from inside. Gentle, patient, waiting. I tore back into the hall. The numbers had changed again. 3, 9, 2, 6, 5. The corridor was longer, darker. The air smelling faintly of rain even though the night outside was dry. Maria was gone from the desk. In her place sat a note written in slanted block letters. Return key or stay. My hand clenched around the brass tag. Heavy. Too heavy now. It seemed to pull toward the corridor like a magnet finding its true north. I forced myself to look back at room 9. The door was wide open now, light spilling from inside like syrup, thick and golden. On the bed sat another Polaroid. My own face again, except this time I was sleeping in a striped shirt I hadn't owned in years. The rotary phone inside rang. The sound carried out into the hall, bouncing off the wallpaper like a call in a cave. I took one step back, then another. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single text. The right hour. The right room. You'll know. The wardrobe knocked again. Even from here, distant and muffled but clear. I didn't want to know what guest waited behind that paper wall. And yet, my feet shifted toward the door. Because part of me, stupid, terrified, human, needed to see. The brass key grew hotter in my hand. The air in the corridor thickened, pressing on my lungs. When I looked down, the tag no longer read 9. It read my room. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight, my Reddit story lovers. Thanks for staying with me right to the end. I hope these tales gave you the chills and kept you hooked. If you enjoyed them, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Bedtime Blocks, and let me know in the comments which story got under your skin the most. Until next time, sleep well, dream carefully, and I'll see you in the next one.